The little girl's question didn't echo. It didn't need to. It landed softly in the quiet park and still managed to feel heavier than anything spoken out loud. Are we bad people, Mama? Her voice wasn't loud. It was tired. The kind of tired that comes from asking the same question in your head too many times and never getting an answer that feels real. A few steps away, a man froze. Jacob stood there with a paper grocery bag pressed into his palm, the thin handles biting into his skin. But he didn't notice the pain. His chest tightened instead. Time slowed in that strange way it does when something inside you cracks and you know it will never settle back the same way again. The bench sat beneath nearly bare trees in a small Ohio town, where autumn always arrived early and stayed longer than it was welcome. The woman on the bench looked like she was carrying winter already. Her shoulders curved inward, her coat pulled close, not just against the cold, but against the world. Her name was Rachel. She held her daughter, Anna, closer than the girl really needed, but some days, holding on was the only proof you still belonged somewhere. Anna's hair was pulled back too tightly, not for fashion, but because mornings had become rushed and mirrors didn't matter anymore. Their clothes were clean, but worn thin, stretched the same way hope stretches when bills stack higher than prayers. Jacob hadn't planned to stop at the park that afternoon. He had only come because the grocery store felt unbearably quiet after dropping his son off at school. Silence had a way of reminding him of everything he had lost. His wife had been gone for 3 years. A sudden stroke. No warning. No goodbye. Just a half-finished cup of coffee and a life that refused to pause for grief. Since then, Jacob had learned how to braid hair badly, burn pancakes consistently, and smile through the kind of loneliness that presses on your ribs late at night. He thought he had grown used to pain, until he heard that question. If you were standing there, holding groceries and your own regrets, would you have walked away like everyone else did that day? Would you have told yourself it wasn't your place? That the world was already heavy enough, and you were carrying all you could manage? Jacob asked himself that as his feet refused to move. His mind replayed every moment he had once wished someone, anyone, would have stepped in for him. He watched Rachel lower her head, watched her lips move as she searched for an answer gentle enough not to bruise a child's heart, but honest enough not to be a lie. No mother should ever have to answer that question, especially not one who had already lost so much. Rachel's life hadn't always looked like this. Once, there was a small house, a husband named Mark, promises that felt solid, evenings filled with laughter instead of eviction notices. But addiction found Mark before forever could. When he left, the silence that followed was loud and unforgiving. Friends disappeared faster than Rachel ever imagined. Jobs came and went, mostly went. Dignity became something she rationed like heat in winter. Anna learned quickly. She learned not to ask for things. Learned how to read her mother's face to know when money was gone. Learned that being quiet sometimes kept the lights on just a little longer. Jacob didn't know the details. He didn't need to. Hardship is a language of its own. He saw it in the way Rachel's hands trembled, in the way Anna searched her mother's face for reassurance that never fully arrived. The grocery bag in Jacob's hand suddenly felt heavier, not because of what was inside, but because of the choice forming in his chest. He thought of his son, Caleb, at home with homework spread across the table. Thought of the nights Caleb had asked where his mom was, and why heaven felt so far away. He remembered strangers who had brought casseroles in those early weeks after the funeral. People whose names he never learned, but whose kindness had kept him standing. Jacob took one step forward, then another. His heart pounded with the fear of doing the wrong thing for the right reasons. He didn't interrupt. He didn't speak right away. He just stood close enough to be seen, close enough to be human. When Rachel finally noticed him, her eyes flashed with the defensiveness of someone used to being judged. But Jacob's face held no pity, only recognition. He knelt slowly, setting the grocery bag down as if it was something sacred. The world seemed to hold its breath. Jacob spoke gently, not to rescue, not to correct, but to remind. He talked about how people end up in places they never planned to be, about how being broken doesn't make someone bad, about how sometimes the strongest people are the ones who keep showing up even when life keeps knocking them down. He told Anna that good people still hurt, still lose, still sit on park benches wondering how everything slipped away. Rachel listened. Tears gathered despite her effort to stay composed, because it had been so long since anyone spoke to them like they mattered. That afternoon didn't fix everything. There were no miracles, no dramatic rescues, no sudden turn of fortune. But Jacob offered what he could, and it turned out to be more than he realized. He shared information about a local church food pantry, an after-school program, a community center that helped with job placement. Then he did something that mattered even more. He invited them to dinner, not as charity, as family, because loneliness feeds on isolation and shrinks when doors open. Rachel hesitated. Pride wrestled with need. Then Anna's small hand slipped into his and squeezed. Something softened enough to say yes. Weeks passed, then months. Rachel found part-time work at a daycare, a place where patience mattered more than perfection. Anna started smiling again, the kind of smile that reaches the eyes and stays a while. Jacob became a regular presence, not a savior, a friend, someone who understood that healing isn't a straight line. The park bench remained, but it no longer felt like a place of judgment. Just another chapter. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with colors that felt like forgiveness, Anna ran ahead on the sidewalk, her laughter echoing back like a promise. Rachel walked beside Jacob, lighter somehow. She told him she still remembered that day, still remembered how everything could have gone differently if he had chosen to walk away. Jacob shrugged, uncomfortable with praise. He said he had only done what he hoped someone would do for his own child, if he wasn't there to hear the question. Before this story ends, take a moment and tell us in the comments what you would have done if you were standing there that day, and whether you believe small kindnesses can truly change lives. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop, listen, and answer a question that was never meant to be asked. And if this story stirred something in your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Not out of habit, but because you believe the world still needs reminders that compassion can rewrite endings.